Television has impacted the way political campaigns are conducted. On September 26, 1960, Senator John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon changed modern politics with the first televised presidential debate. Kennedy believed that television could impact voters and revolutionize American politics. Kennedy believed in the power of words, and he used television to communicate with Americans in a place they were most comfortable, the living room. Kennedy used the power of words, both written and spoken, to win votes, to set goals, to change minds, and to inspire the nation. He would spend hours reading great speeches of the ages and researching the right words and phrases to send the right message. His speeches helped give urgency to the idea that democracy thrives when citizens contribute their talents to the common good. He believed that a good leader could inspire citizens' commitment, actions, and acts of sacrifice. John F. Kennedy was born in Massachusetts on May 29, 1917. In college, John realized that words were a powerful tool. He wrote his thesis while England slept. It was later published into a book. During World War II, John served as a lieutenant in the Navy, where he earned a Purple Heart for saving his crew. After the war, Kennedy ran for Congress and won in the November election. He was only 29. In 1952, he ran for the U.S. Senate. Kennedy won the election and became a senator from Massachusetts. By the 1950s, many Americans had television in their living rooms, and television was quickly becoming a dominant source of information. In 1956, the Democratic National Convention was televised for the very first time. Senator John Kennedy gave the nominating speech.
We here today are selecting a man who must be more than something of a good candidate, more than a good politician or a good liberal or a good conservative. We are selecting the head of the most powerful nation on earth, the man who literally will hold in his hands the power of survival or destruction, of freedom or slavery. We are selecting here today the man who, for the next 4 years, will be guiding for good or evil, for better or worse, the destinies of our nation and, to a large extent, the destinies of the free world.
After the speech, Kennedy had won the respect of the Democratic Party. On May 10, 1960, John Kennedy became the Democratic presidential nominee. At the National Convention in Los Angeles, his speech about our changing world resonated in many Americans.
But I believe that the times require imagination and courage and perseverance.
Even before his nomination, Kennedy began working on his image. He worked hard to impress his television audience and so cultivate an image of himself as a personable as well as political. Kennedy went before the cameras to confront broader concerns such as his religion and relative inexperience. With television sets in over 90% of American homes, millions of Americans watched the first television debate. Kennedy's main focus was on communicating with American voters.
I'm not satisfied until every American enjoys his full constitutional rights.
After the debate, Kennedy's campaign managers turned parts of his speech into commercials that were televised frequently throughout the campaign. Nearly 200 commercials were produced, with catchy slogans and images that would resonate with televised audience.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man for president?
On November 8, 1960, JFK became the youngest man ever elected president, the first Catholic and the first president born in the 20th century.
January 20, 1961, 70 million Americans watched Kennedy's inauguration in their living rooms. Kennedy's words as not appealed to Americans' novelist instinct.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
He made it exciting to be an American during the Cold War era. His words lifted the spirits and continued echoing in the minds and hearts of people who heard him. 5 days later, on January 25, 1961, John F. Kennedy became the first U.S. president to hold a live televised news conference.
To the United Nations General Assembly for the resumption of the disarmament debate sometime.
In April of 1961, Russia was the first to launch a man into space. In one of his groundbreaking speeches, he addressed students at Rice University with his dream of creating a space program that would put an American on the moon by 1970.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things.
In his speech dedicating the new Aerospace Medical Center, he inspired the American people to share his dream and participate in the new effort in going to the moon.
Stand on the edge of a great new era, filled with both crisis and opportunity. An era to be characterized by achievement and by challenge. This nation has tossed its cap over the wall of space, and we have no choice but to follow it. With the vital help of this Aerospace Medical Center, with the help of all those who labor in the space endeavor, with the help and support of all Americans, we will climb this wall with safety and with speed, and we shall then explore the wonders on the other side.
On June 11th of 1963, President Kennedy called on Americans to recognize civil rights. In his televised civil rights speech, he asked white Americans to see the world as African Americans did.
The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, if he cannot send his children to the best public school available, if he cannot vote for the public officials who represent him, if, in short, he cannot enjoy the full and free life which all of us want, then who among us would be content to have the color of his skin changed and stand in his place? Who among us would then be content with the counsels of patience and delay?
Some may say his greatest speech was about freedom. At the height of the Cold War, on June 23, 1963, President Kennedy went to Berlin. The city had been divided into West Berlin and East Berlin.
Freedom has many difficulties, and democracy is not perfect. But we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in, to prevent them from leaving us.
President Kennedy's presidencies began and ended on television. On November 22, 1963, the president and his wife arrived in Texas and boarded an open limousine.
Crowds of excited people lined the streets and waved at the Kennedys. The car turned off Main Street at the Daily Plaza around 12:30 p.m. As it was passing the Texas School Book Depository, gunfire suddenly erupted.
Bullets struck the president's neck and head, and he slumped over toward Mrs. Kennedy. Television programs were interrupted to announce the shooting.
From CBS News. In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. The first reports say that President Kennedy has been seriously wounded by this shooting.
An hour later, there was a tearful Walter Cronkite announced the death of the president.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
Televised news coverage of Kennedy's assassination captivated the country.
For 3 days, Americans were glued to the televisions watching the president's funeral.
It was one of the first major tragedies seen on television in almost every living room. On November 25, 1963, John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery, where an eternal flame was lit by his widow to forever mark the grave. President Kennedy was at the forefront of the television revolution, using the television to communicate face-to-face with Americans. Kennedy pioneered the presidential news conferences, as well as the political use of speeches to address a broad audience. His words, both written and spoken, continue to inspire future presidents. Kennedy's candidacies and presidencies transformed American politics by bringing it to a home. American living rooms have become eyewitnesses to news conferences, state funerals, wars, presidential impeachments, political scandals, and numerous debates.
Today, social media has had a big impact on presidential elections and roles of government. There is more opportunity than ever before to communicate with our government leaders, to feel part of the conversation, to share in the collective knowledge and access ideas from around the world.
The torch has been passed from the first living room candidate to a new generation.